there's some opportunity for a few more giveaways. So I'm going to talk about the developer journey map that I think is really important when you think about how to set up a program and for the work that you do. A developer's goals along the way on that journey, developer relations framework that we use, and I think somebody showed you yesterday. And then I really want to gear down on DX. There's so many things that you could talk about in terms of developer relations, but I wanted to focus on DX in this talk. Talk about some of the main friction areas, what you can do about it, and how to make your journey fabulous. So many of you know who I am. I've been in developer relations for a really long time. I actually started my first, and I came upon it through community. So some of you came at it, technical, you were already developing products. Some of you came at it more from that, even that marketing side where you're supporting products that way. I actually came at it from community. And I do have a slight technical background. I coded billing systems at one point for some of the telcos, but I'm not a technologist, but I realized how important it was to bring developers together to help them learn and help them share what they were going through. And so I actually started my first technical community in 2001 when mobile was just getting started, and how important it was for mobile developers and that mobile ecosystem to get together. And sort of branched off from there. And at one point, I was just so tired of everybody coming to me with like, can you hook me up with this person? And can you show me how to do this? And I thought, you know what, at the time in 2006, I wanted to create a new technology so I could watch my it was really, my pain point was I wanted to put furniture in my room wherever I wanted to, not just where the TV and the cable was located. So I wanted to create a technology where you can watch your TV anywhere. And this fellow from Orange Telecom came up to me and he goes, Carolyn, you're way too early for that. But I think you can do something around this community of developers and community of programs that you have. So I started an organization called LipJam. We started to host developer events because people wanted us to, and throughout that, I got to really understand, again, globally, what developers were looking for and what they needed, and more so, what developer programs weren't providing. And so we started to work with developer programs over that time, and sort of fast forward 15 years later, from working with so many of these companies, what we decided to do, or what I decided to do anyways, I wanted to write a book. I just wanted to I was actually burnt out at the time too, and my business partner had died from cancer, and I just didn't want to do DevRel anymore, and I thought, you know what, but I had all this good information. So I thought if I could just write the book and give it away, I can walk away. And as I started to write the book, I realized how much I love this practice of developer relations and how important it was for the companies we work with, for the developers we work with. And I thought, wait a minute, why am I going to step away from something I love so much? So came back and started to work with companies again. And the other thing that I had been doing over the last 9 years, the 10th one will be this year, is I published that annual State of Developer Relations report. So there you can find out, how many developer programs report to marketing, or how many report to engineering. What do DevRel people get paid? There's lots of great information, so take a look at that report. So that's sort of my background, and what we've done now with my co-authors, we've created a new agency called DevRel.agency that we're just launching in the next month. And I was speaking to a few of you earlier. I've done some fractional work in DevRel, but mostly I've always done it either from a community perspective, or I've worked with hundreds of different companies helping them set up their programs or optimize their programs. And I really like doing that, because I get to work with so many different technologies and so many people and travel around the world and work with a lot of companies. So I come to you with knowledge and with the desire to have developer relations seen as a legitimate practice that should probably be at a C level in a company. And I come at it from love for this industry and this practice and how great it is. So I just wanted to preface with that. And so, trying to move forward on my screen. There we go. So I created this the other day, and I did share it online. So we're going to play a little bit of DevRel bingo while I go at it. So I didn't know how to do it, but take a picture of it. You can see maybe what all the words are. But to me, they're the most important words that you're going to find in developer relations. And I decided to put open source in the middle. At one point, I thought maybe I should have put community in the middle, but enough of you convinced me to keep open source there. So you'll find a lot of the terms that we use, and if any of you are new to developer relations, it's important to understand what these are and how they relate to what you do. So watch them throughout, and I've got 2 more books to give away to see who's come up with the most amount of DevRel bingo words. So when we talk about journey maps, all great developer journeys start with a map. And this comes from a very well-known fellow by the name of Dana Fujikawa, who works with me. And he's always the one that comes up with those straight statements, like, he never kind of gets really excited about stuff. It's like, all great developer journeys start with a map. So the question becomes, what kind of a map? So in part of the work that I did in creating the book is we put together this developer journey map. And how many of you have seen this before, used it before? It's available on, we put it up on GitHub, and there's lots of other places where you can find it. The important thing to think about when you look at it, often in companies, they'll give you a funnel. Well, just follow this funnel. Or they'll take a look at it from, again, here's what we want you to do because it's important for the business. And I think if you're going to be successful in developer relations, you need to look at it from the developer perspective, your customer, your user's perspective. So that's what this is. There's 42 touch points. You know why 42 is really important? There could be more, there could be less. It's really about customizing it for your own program. But in terms of how the journey works, it pretty much goes the same. It goes from left to right. We're often asked too why some of the points on the journey map maybe are used more in one spot than the other. For instance, forums are used under evaluate. We chose to put the touch point where the developer tends to first find it. So when a developer's coming through and is trying to figure out, is this of use to me? Is this going to be really interesting? One of the places that they go very quickly is to forums because they want to see, is it active? Is anybody else doing anything with it? They may not interact with it themselves, but it's just really important very early in their journey to find out about it. So that just gives you sort of a perspective about what that is. So just very quickly, because I want to go into the DX side of things. So the developer journey, again, from when a developer discovers you, evaluates you, is learning. Remember, developers make decisions about things they learn by doing, and while they learn your product, they're going to be evaluating it, whether it's of value to them. Then they're going to build something, start off with hello world, until they finally scale and put it in their own product. One of the things I often say that's really important that people forget about is your product or your tool is just an input into somebody else's product. You can't forget that. And yours isn't the only tool or the only other product, only other developer tool. On average, there's between like 9 and 15 other tool sets that a developer is using. So, when you watch them go through this journey and get to scale, it's important for you to help them be as successful as they can and be as friction-free as they can so they can get through your journey, because they're on other journeys as well. And then if there are other technical dependencies that are important, that you be very aware of that. And I do find in developer relations, a lot of folks are, you can be very siloed in what you do, and you think your technology is the most important ever. And it may indeed be very important, and it may indeed help a developer do something really fantastic, but just remember that yours isn't the only one that they're using. So find out, they want to know, is it of use to me? Will it meet my needs? How does it work? Can I build a proof of concept, and can I build to scale? So just watch that journey point. When you take a look at the journey map too, and you're thinking, I'm starting a developer program and I'm not sure what to do, just look at the journey map and start to block it out. It's a great framework just to do that, build the program. So one of the things we do, and is good for anybody to do, is do journey map reviews. So you've got a journey happening already and friction logs, and we do this quite often. There's a number of factors, and I'll go through a few of them, about time to complete this journey, and they really affect how the developer chooses to work with you and adopts your product. So I can't underestimate how important it is that you review your journey on an ongoing basis. Typically what we do when we do that is we get developers who are blind, never seen your product before, and we'll just start them at Google and send them away with a couple keywords, and we see what happens. So this was an actual review that a developer did, and they didn't make it. They couldn't build a hello world with this particular product. It took them 194 steps, and they still couldn't build with the product. And as you see, just to discover the product and find you, it took them 22 steps. So if you just even go through some of this yourself, you're going to want to make sure, number one, they complete it, but you take the friction out of it. So, the next time somebody went through it, came down to 100 steps, came down to 50 steps, depending on the product, 50 steps could be okay, but certainly this was way too many. So understanding and putting those, putting that friction and getting the friction logs in place and getting rid of the friction is important, because you want somebody to adopt your product and you want them to scale with it. So I'm just going to focus on DX, developer experience, which is this part you can see here. In developer relations, we tend to talk about DX as the product, and then the documentation that goes around it. There's certainly a lot more that a developer experiences when they're going to try and use your product, but in DevRel we tend to talk about DX as this. But there's a school of thought now around internal developer experience and external developer experience, so I wanted to go through that so you're clear on that. And there's some great people writing about internal developer experience. So in terms of internal developer experience, it's what a developer experiences in their company. They've got processes, there's a culture that they have to put up with, there's teammates they may or may not like. It all affects their ability to be successful. Now, you can't affect that. That's a company-wide thing, and it's usually a leadership issue. But if they happen to be using your product to get somewhere, there may be barriers because they're on a sprint cycle that's just not aligning with your product. So those are some things to keep in mind. But again, if you can keep your developer journey and your product as frictionless as possible, you're going to help them with the things that they're working on the internal side. Now, for us in DevRel, we're on the external side because we've got a tool that we're selling to somebody else to use. And so it's incumbent on us to focus on making that product great and making that documentation great that goes around it. And again, I'm just going to focus on this part. So typically though, depending on where DevRel sits in an organization, you cannot affect product unless you're gathering information and bringing it in. So that's part of what your role is, to make friends with product. But you can affect a lot of other things, and it depends on where you're sitting, but we'll take a look at a couple of them. So I come back to the developer relations framework that Marino showed the other day. This is really what developer relations is all about. There's developer marketing, there's developer education. Developer marketing is awareness. How do you bring them in? How do you find developers? Developer education is all the tutorials, the YouTube videos, We're seeing more and more people look at early learning journeys for developers. There's developer success, so they're already working with your product. How do you support them even better? How do you turn them into ambassadors for you? The community, of course, that's very important. But what we're going to focus on a little, again, is this developer experience, which, again, product and docs is really the heart of it. I often see folks in developer relations that are so focused on community, which is great. You can go ahead and create, try and do all these things around community, but if your product sucks, it doesn't matter how good your community is, right? And if you don't have the docs and the startup guides to help your developers work with your product, again, it doesn't matter how many events you go to, it doesn't matter how many times you take somebody out for lunch to, help them be a good community with you. The docs and the product are super important. So it's really at the heart of DevRel. So what does success look like for developers? Because that's your job. Your job is to help them find success. And I often say, for a developer, if they can stand up and go with your product and go, I made that, that's success. If they're going, crap, don't tell anybody that was my product. If they're very frustrated with what they're working on, that's not success. A developer wants to be super prideful of saying, yes, I developed it. That's what you need to do at the end of the day, is help them be successful. And look at how happy this guy is that he made something super cool, which happens to be Dana Fujikawa, by the way. So, probably heard this thing a million times. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This was another quote I found that says, the first step in a journey is to lose your way. And for any of us who've gone traveling and backpacked, that's fun, but it's a big fail when it comes to developer experience and developer relations. You want to make sure a developer is very well positioned to know what they need to do with your company and where they need to go with the product. So this is a classic first fail, and we see this quite often, especially with younger companies that nobody knows about, or companies that have a lot of competitors, where this was a journey where it took 9 steps and they just couldn't even get out of Google to find you. So how do developers find you? They go to Google, they go to their peers. That's what they do. They might happen to be in Reddit and see something, or Hacker News and read something, but typically it's going to be from peers, and it's going to be a Google search. So you need to make sure you're optimized for that. Otherwise, they're not even going to find you. So if they can't find you, nothing else is going to happen. So signpost, especially around SEO. It's interesting how many people make this mistake. For a developer who's been around, especially, they're going to do a couple of things. They're going to, try and search for your company, or they're going to go right to, type in a URL that's either developer@mycompany.com or, mycompany.com/developer. Make sure that's there. Even if it links to something else, that's okay. Developers know that's what we start with. Also make sure that if you are with a larger company, that the developer can find it right from the home page. And I put this kind of up as a joke, I don't know how you can see it. It's from Twilio a little while ago. And they didn't say developers. What they said was, if you're not a developer, go here. Everything else is for developer. If you're not a developer, go here. So I thought that was kind of an intelligent way of making it really, really cool and simple. But if a developer is looking all over going, I heard you had a developer product, I can't figure out what you do and I don't know where to go, make sure you're signposting for them. Make sure they have a soft landing. And by what I mean by that is really a developer portal that in all one place shows them where to go. And it's not just docs. It's not just docs. Documentation for sure, but point them where your events are. Point them to where they can read some other blogs or tutorials. Point them to where they're going to be able to find your forum or your Discord channel or whatever it is. Point them to where they can find some additional educational products. Make sure that they've got that soft landing so they know, again, that it's really clear about what you're doing and they know where to go next for what they need to do. Doc architecture. Don't try and make up something really fancy. There's some pretty standard doc architectures that are out there. This happens to be from NVIDIA, but it's something we recommend all the time. You've got an overview, you've got your quick start guide, here's how I get to my tutorials, you've got some sample apps, you've got your reference guides, etc. So it's again, there's a standard architecture that developers are going to be expecting to do. There's README, there's a number of places where you can go to have something that helps and walks you through. We've seen time and time again, big companies and startups decide that they actually want to build their own documentation platform from scratch. Just say no to that. Your developers, if they're helping build it, they should have much more better things to do in terms of building your own product than trying to build a docs platform. There's lots of good stuff out there, but create an architecture that they already understand. Anybody heard about the rule of generalization? Anybody ever leave their keys somewhere and then just like never find them ever again? Yeah, same sort of thing. So using, extrapolating from that rule of generalization, I came up with like, don't let your developers create their own docs. And the reason why is they're just too close to it. The reason why you can't find your keys when you put them in one spot and you've walked by them 10, 20 times is because you just don't see it anymore. And it's the same with developers writing their own docs. They know their workarounds. They've seen this, they've seen different pieces before. And when you're writing your docs, you really need to make them for your lowest common denominator. And the developers who wrote it isn't that lowest common denominator. So you really need to think about that, because otherwise it's, yeah. And what we also say too is don't rely on the auto docs, because again, you can use the auto docs for a first round, but they don't come at it from the way your developers need it. They leave out just leaves out way too much information for your developer to really get it and understand what they need to do. Just leaves out way too much important info. Have a hello world. We've seen too many times hello worlds that don't work, aren't specific enough for what a developer needs to do. So really take the time to plan out. And again, if you're in DevRel or you need to work with product, tell them we need a hello world, and it needs to really be able to give a developer the idea of what they can do with it. Because if they can't get through hello world, they're gone. They're really not going to come back and find out a little bit more. So a hello world is super important. Corporate alignment. Make friends with everybody. Again, within DevRel, you might be a little more marketing, you might be a little more in engineering, you might be under product. Wherever you are, your job is to understand what developers need as DevRel. That's where you come in. So, make that make that alignment, make friends with other people in other parts of DevRel that you need to make happen. Because you might come in and go, I've just gotten some great information from somebody, from some developers, we think this needs to be changed. Well, we'll put that on the next sprint. But they're not even going to be able to use it. If you don't have that relationship, it's going to be a really hard time to make some of those changes that need to happen. So, as a roundup, remember you're only part of a developer's story. They got a lot of other things going on. Know where you want that first step to be and make it a soft landing. Signpost for best directions. Create an ideal docs arc. Make it easy to learn by using a great hello world. Make help easy to find and available, which is often not. Make alliances with anybody that can impact DevRel. And remember why you're here, which is the goal of DevRel is to enable your developers to be successful with your product while aligning with your corporate goals. That's it. That's why we're here. The end. So, how many people got 10 words in bingo? Nice. Okay, well, how many people got more than 10? You told me you really wanted a book, so I'm gonna believe you. Thank you very much for, I really appreciate the support I've gotten here. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to my talk, and I will give you a bookend. I think I promised you a book last night too, didn't I?
I have one.
You have one? Okay, anyways, thank you very much.